We're out hundreds of thousands of dollars.
How stressful has this been for you, both emotionally, financially?
This has definitely been the most stressful time for my wife and I in our whole lives. We didn't think the government would step in as quickly and as dramatically as they did. And even if they did, who really thought it would have such an impact?
That interview was from last June with a homeowner named Bruce. He was caught up in the early 2017 housing crunch, and like many people, Bruce bought a house before selling his old house. And around the same time in April, the provincial government announced some new housing regulations, which included a foreign buyers tax, and the housing market in the GTA took a dip. Well, today, for the first time, we're learning just how much money people lost in the housing game during a tumultuous 3 to 4 months.
The sum of all of those losses was about $135 million, and that was just adding up really all of the declines from the peak prices that buyers paid to the prices that sellers eventually sold their homes for. The average decline was about $140,000, but much higher. Like in Richmond Hill, the difference was about $300,000 between the price that was sold at the peak and what sellers eventually ended up selling it for months later.
John Pisalis from Realosophy looked at a combined 988 properties that lost a combined $135 million in just 134 days. His research also found that the biggest drop in housing prices were found in places where the highest number of investors purchased homes and put them up for rent. For example, in Toronto, where about 15% of all properties are investments, prices only dropped about 12% on average. In the first quarter of 2017, a third of all homes in Newmarket were purchased by speculators. And when the market turned, prices dropped more than 20%. Some who purchased a house in the peak of the market then got stuck with their old home and had to back out of their deals. Pisalis said many of those individuals are now getting sued for hundreds of thousands of dollars by sellers.
This is money that those buyers are on the hook for. So, not only did they lose their deposits, but in many cases, the sellers are now suing those buyers for that difference and winning in court.
We caught up again today with Bruce on the phone. He asked me not use his last name. He says since we spoke with him about this time last year, he was fortunate enough to find bridge financing to carry both the home he bought in Toronto and his family's York Region property they were trying to sell. But he had to pay 10% interest on a $1.2 million financing deal for more than 3 months until their old home up north sold.
Ours went from 1.1. People were selling our street for 1.1 within a week, and we ended up selling 2 months later for 800. So ours went down over 30%. We were at our lawyer's office trying to somehow close this deal, and there were 2 other people that weren't able to arrange last-second financing like we were able to, just normal people, and they lost their whole life savings, lost the whole thing.
Bruce says the drop in housing prices should serve as a warning to governments when they intervene, that it's not just investors and speculators that get hurt, but regular everyday people. Now, ahead on City News, we're going to compare the bubble burst in the housing market here in the GTA to the housing crash in the USA between 2006 and 2012, and some of those numbers might shock you. Earlier on City News, we told you just how much money people lost in the housing hoopla last year. Well, the housing market took a pretty big dip in about 3 to 4 months. About 1,000 homeowners in the GTA lost $135 million. Now, the data is being compiled by one broker here in the GTA, and he says that in the height of the housing rush, we saw about 1 in 5 properties being purchased by investors. And he says those investors were banking on the good times to keep on rolling.
The people who are buying these investment properties were just buying single-family homes. I mean, so in Richmond Hill and Markham, for example, they were buying $1.5 million homes on average and just renting them for $2,500 a month. And that rent isn't enough to cover carrying costs. And the reason they were doing that was because they just believed that the home would be worth $300,000 more a year from now. It was incredible. I mean, on average, these homes in Markham and Richmond Hill, these investment properties, because we knew the rents, we knew what people paid for them, they were losing on average $2,500 a month. That means, you, the investor, are paying out of your own pocket $2,500 a month to carry this investment property because you just believe it's going to be worth more in the future. And it didn't work out very well, no.
Still, John Pasalis with Realosophy says the foreign buyer's tax that was rolled out last April was just a small pin that pricked the housing bubble, but it prompted wary buyers to take a step back while sellers rushed to put their places on the market, and that triggered a historic North American housing dip.
Prices dropped 18% between March and July, so 4 months, which is incredibly rapid. I mean, that's faster than any of the U.S. cities when they had their financial crisis. I think the fastest was Miami, and they saw prices fall 20% in a year. And the average was about almost a year and a half or 2 years. So the 4 months in the GTA was very rapid, and kind of really partly explains why we had so many people backing out of deals, because prices fell 20% in 4 months. You know, the home that you bought for $1 million was worth $800,000 4 months later, and that causes all sorts of problems.
Now, the difference is, according to Pasalis, that the housing market here in the GTA stopped, while in the U.S. the bottom continued to fall out. Now, as for the future, he believes that things have stabilized here in the GTA, though he says one part to keep an eye on is the condo market. As the price of condos continues to creep up to the price of a house, he says that is cause for concern.